Hey guys, welcome back. As you can see, I'm sitting at the desk and we're going to be doing something a little different this time around. Going to be designing and printing the mount for the control panel for the exhaust fans that I installed a couple of videos ago. It's going to be a lot of Fusion work, Fusion 360. I'm not an expert at Fusion 360. I've dabbled in it. Mostly what I've done is 2D work for my plasma cutter. So the 3D work is something I've just gotten into when I got my first 3D printer. I've designed a few parts, a few different things. I'm getting a handle on it, but I'm going to share with you my design process for what I did for this control mount. Now, since I'm going into so much of the design work, this video is running a little bit long, so I'm going to be cutting it into two parts. So the first part will be getting into the prototype phase, and then we will finalize the design in the next video and print up the working model. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay guys, welcome back. And this week we're going to be working on the mount for the exhaust fan control that I installed a couple of videos ago. So I've started already in Fusion. I'm going to show you what we've got so far. I've started, what you're seeing here on screen is a prototype. It's for fitment. So I can see basically if I've got the dimensions close enough for the control box to fit in this area here. I've got slots designed in it and a negative space and a cutout here for the control cables. Wow, getting far away. I'm new to the 3D Connection Space Mouse, or fairly new to it. I enjoy this thing, but sometimes it gets away from me. So this is my 3D Connection Space Mouse. I've just got a basic one. I don't have all the fancy controls and stuff because I really don't need all that. Okay, so let me start at the beginning and we will show you what we got. So I started with this sketch, and what this sketch represents is the size of the control box itself. So I'm for looking down on the control box from the top, this outer rectangle represents the size of the overall box. Those are the flanges that are around the side. They do have mounting holes in them. I didn't bother modeling those because I'm not going to be using them. And this inner rectangle represents the size of the box itself, where it comes off the flange. So I started with that, and basically what I'm building is a negative space. So when I build the actual mount, I can use the negative space we're about to put together here to cut out the hole for it. And I made these what I thought was a little bit generous in size, but we'll see when we get to the fitment whether I was close enough. Okay, I did it in two extrudes. First was the flange. Now this is the plane of the sketch, which is basically the sketch is drawn on this plane that's this face. So the first extrude I did in a negative direction to bring it down. So it's 1.8 millimeters thick, and I had to do a negative to get it to go in the direction I wanted it to. And then the second extrude come up off that same plane and I brought it up 27.25 millimeters. That's probably more than I needed, but I wanted to make sure I had enough negative space that it was going to cut deep enough into the panel. As you'll see in a little bit, that was a lot more than I actually needed, but we'll get to that in a second. So after I did that, turn these off. I did another sketch on the bottom of the mount or the control box body, and basically this is for the two cables that run off the bottom. There are two cables plugged in. One is the power to the fan, the other is the probe, the temperature probe, which I'm going to wind up leaving on. I talked earlier about finding a way to eliminate that, but it shows the temperature down here and the relative humidity, so I'm actually just going to leave it attached. I'll figure out something to do with the probes so that it doesn't look so bad, just a ball of wire hanging off the bottom of it right now. But I've got those drawn out, and it's just two, right now they're 12 millimeter circles with a rectangle drawn between them from one tangent line centered above the center down to a corresponding tangent line centered at the bottom of the other circle. That's the easiest way to get these two lines, which are really the only things I needed to extrude. I just had to select all these faces when I did my extrude, as you'll see. And there's that extrude. So that comes out, so that creates an exclusion zone or a cutting area so that when I do the mount, they'll have room for those cables. You may have seen that on the original model when I was showing it at the beginning of this clip. Now after that, so now we'll turn this body off. I went back to the original plane and drew up this. Just a simple rectangle. Because really right now I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just trying to make the prototype. And then I extruded that out. It's thinking about it. And I did a two-stage extrude on it because that sketch was also on the same plane. So I needed it to go in two different directions. So I did an asymmetrical dual extrude. So I did 5 millimeters up off of that plane and then 8 millimeters down. So when I show you the first body, cancel that extrude, bring the first body back, and I select it, you can see that this line represents the plane from there to there. That's the original plane all the sketches are drawn on. So I've got this body and this body. Well, such that I have a 5 millimeter flange or area above this flange that ought to provide me enough strength to hold that. It's probably way more strength than I need, but I've always considered over-engineering, similar to overkill, that it's underrated. There needs to be more over-engineering in our world again, like they used to do. There are concrete bridges that were built in the 30s and 40s still standing, while concrete bridges that were built 10 years ago are falling apart. Something wrong with that equation. Anyway, so when I did the combine, and I combined this body with this body, I set this body to be the cut. So when the combine come through and this was cut out of it, we're pretty much left with this. Now, as you can see, and let me go back to before this again. And I'll select body one again. You can see when I did it, when I did the original sketch, I actually extended it out past all the way around. And the main reason I did that was because it was easier to do a symmetrical center out sketch or center out rectangle. So I started here and then pulled it out to where I wanted it. It was just easier to throw that out there than it was to try and offset. I'd have to find how far down I wanted to offset, blah, blah. So instead of doing that, or coming in and doing an offset line off the top down to where I wanted it, after I did the combine and cut, which cut that first body out of the second body, then I just went back in and I did an extrude, basically as a cut from this face down to that face. It was a simple extrude that just took that off. See where the original sketch was? And I just took that off, and it just took it right down to the point where the top edge of the body 2 was. So that's the way I come up to the prototype so far. And we're going to go over and we're going to see if this fits. But before we do that, I'm just going to mention that I've got a couple of different ideas for how I'm going to mount it onto that the side rail of the end of the shelves. Considering doing it at an angle this way so that the control is facing a little bit up, but since it's been zip tied over there, I haven't had any trouble seeing it. So I'm coming back around to just doing it flat and doing something on the back here, maybe putting a couple of holes. So I just run some simple bolts over through those slots on the end of the shelves to mount it. Nothing fancy. I could come in and put a SCADIS type hook or two back here, spaced to fit those slots. That's an option. Printing that would be a little more challenging because I'd have to have supports run up through here. But when I printed the prototype, I printed it on this face anyway, so it was in this orientation. And just to keep it from tipping over, I did paint a couple of support points up the back and on these two faces here on the front to kind of prevent it from tipping over, and it worked fine. It may not have tipped over because it does have quite a bit of surface area on this bottom face, but I'm a belt and suspenders kind of guy, and since I only wanted to print it once and didn't want to have a failure and print it again, I figured a couple of supports was worth the effort. So, but let's go over and check the prototype and see how it fits, and then we'll come back and make any adjustments and try again. So let me get this off the P2S here. Oh, yeah. Rims come right off. Supports that I used to make sure it didn't fall over, because I added those. It really didn't need them in its own design. But we're going to take this and bring it over here. Let me get you set up on a tripod and see how it fits, because I'm going to take this down. All right, so I've got this. This is the prototype, or at least the intermediate stage there. Let's see how well I measured everything on Fusion. Ooh, that's tight. I think we might have to go in and open that up a little bit. Where is the tightness happening here? I don't care if it's a little tight, but I think that might be a bit much. I think we're going to have to open up. Looks like I've got a little bit of room on that end right there. So I think my tightness is where it's clamping down on these flanges here. We can open those up a little bit in Fusion. It will go. When I get this on here, I may never get it back off again. That will be a tragedy. Yeah, I think that's no sense going any further. I know that's not going to work. Also, my cutouts there are not lined, that right there is not lined up right. I think I'm going to have to pull that one, at least this end of it, over some. But without getting it all the way in there, don't think I'm going to be able to know for sure. But I think I'll go in and open those circles up and see if we can get that cut out a little bit, a little more generous. I think I was cutting it too close. No sense, no reason to cut it that close. Okay, guys, we're gonna get in here and edit this prototype. And if you've noticed, change of wardrobe here. Yeah, some time has passed since we started this project. And that's probably going to be a theme through the rest of this project because I'm only able to work on it a few hours here and there as I get some time. But essentially, I'm going to go in and edit a couple of parameters. Well, not parameters because I didn't set them up as parameters, but a couple of dimensions in the sketches and the extrudes to try and open this up a little bit. I didn't bother going in and doing a bunch of parameters on this because one, wasn't sure what I would have needed to have changed. It almost takes as long to set up parameters as it is to do a one-off and go in and just change a couple of measurements here and there, and 3 basic things, maybe 4 that I'm going to be changing on this. So let's get into that. I'm going to run this history marker all the way back to the beginning. So we've got the first sketch. We'll show that sketch. Go edit that sketch. And essentially, the width of the flange is one of the things I'm going to change. And I'm going to change the width of the control box to give us a little more room. The depth of it doesn't matter as much. It's not as critical where it winds up sitting, as long as we have room to get it in the slots and it will slide down and bottom out. That's essentially the 2 things we're going to change on this sketch. And then we're also going to go change one of the extrudes. So I'm going to add about a 1.5 millimeters on this. So we'll go to 134 on that dimension. We'll take this one out. I'm only going to add 1 millimeter on this because I don't think the control box was actually rubbing much, the body of the control box. So we'll take that to 114. And we'll finish that sketch. Then we're going to go ahead and pull out that first extrude, which is the bottom. Now this I do want to edit because this is also one of the areas where I think that we were binding. Ooh, I told you I'm not real good with the space mouse, so we're going to fly around here a little bit. I don't want to add a lot to it because I was able to move it, but I think I want to add at least 0.2 of a millimeter, maybe a whole 1/4 of a millimeter or a 1/2 millimeter. I mean, it might be a little loose in the slot, which will be fine. It's not going to come out. It might jingle around a little bit, but I can always cheat and stuff something in the slot to tighten it up afterwards. So let's go ahead and do this at let's just do it at 2 point, not 12, 2.2. That'll give me 0.4 of a millimeter extra. That's probably more than I'm going to need. Let's go 1.5. I know. 0.5 or 0.5 of a millimeter is probably not going to make a huge difference. So I started at 1.8, so 2.1 gives me 0.3 of a millimeter. Let's do that. Let's go with that. Extrude out the other side. Now this sketch I'm going to change to, let's show it, because I think I could have been a little more generous on these holes. So I'm going to open them up a full millimeter. Take that to 13 millimeters. And you'll notice when I did that, that this point where this rectangle came in to here adjusted with it, because that was what was referenced off of, was this the topmost point, or that tangent line on that circle. So you can see here, if we zoom in, you can see right here that it's up off of that, because this was a 2-point rectangle, and I pulled it starting here at this point and pulled it down to that point there. So when we adjust this circle to also be 13 millimeters, you'll see it tighten that gap up, that come back to being tangential, and then that also became tangential. Well, actually, we have more of coincidences there, because it's coincident with this line, it's coincident with the circle, and it's coincident with the two lines of the rectangle. I'm actually not sure what all three of those coincidences are, but within those 4 things I just said, I'm pretty sure I covered the coincidences. But we'll finish that sketch too, and then pull that extrude out and make sure it acted correctly. And it did. You can see it still lines up with the altered sketch. So everything else should work out just right. That was the sketch there for the whole body. And I shouldn't have to adjust it. There was enough meat over here. I know I moved that edge in out a little bit on both sides, but there should still be enough meat here. I'm not going to adjust that sketch. So we got that extrude. So now we have the two bodies together. And then we're going to do this combine, where we use this body I've got highlighted as a cut to this body right here. Now if I click off of that body so it's not showing anymore, we're going to hide that sketch. So we're back to that. And then the final extrude, which is a push from the top. Make sure that, yep, still left those open. So nothing there changed. So we actually went in and edited all of that and didn't break anything. So I'm going to count that as a win. Let's go ahead. I'm going to export this as a step file. That is one of the things you can do with the free version of Fusion. You can export step files. Now there are other files like BXF files that you cannot, I don't think you can export those unless you pay for the full version of Fusion. So right now I'm on the free version. If this channel takes off and I actually start making money on it, then I probably will go ahead and pay for the full version of Fusion, because out of all the design softwares that I've used so far, it's the one I'm at least most comfortable with. So let's export that, and then I will send that off to the printer, and we'll come back when I have that in hand and we'll test it. Then we'll work on a mounting solution. So, all right, looks like the second prototype is done. Let's get it off here. Still warm. So let's see if I open that up enough. We can proceed on to the next step. Oh, whoops. I guess we're going to get both ends in. I'm good down to there. I didn't open up these holes enough, or didn't move them down enough. Yeah, that's too much. I'm gonna have to space those holes out a little bit more. I must not have measured them quite right. Maybe I got it too far off to one side, because that one looks like there's plenty of room. It could go over some, but this one needs to come over some. So I will move those and maybe open them up just a little bit more, because those are not critical. They're just clearance holes. So we'll do that. I'll go in and edit that, and then we'll move on to going ahead and put those a mounting option on it. I've got some ideas on that, and we'll go into that next. All right, and that's it for this week's video. Stay tuned to the next one when we finish everything up, and I will see you on the next one. Like and subscribe, and don't be a stranger.